Hello, it's Peter Wright and Kathleen Beauvais in Ontario, Canada, with another episode of the Yakking Show. This is the show that connects you with people and ideas to help you find opportunities for a successful life, both in your personal life and in business. And as always, we have interesting guests, but it's not my job to introduce guests. So first, let me introduce co-host Kathleen Beauvais from Ontario. Hi, Kathleen. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great, Peter. Thank you so much. And thank you all so much for tuning into our show. We so appreciate you and we love reading your comments. So please keep those coming. And if anyone is interested in being a guest on our show, please don't hesitate to reach out to either Peter or myself. And we'd love to hear from you. And as Peter mentioned, we do have another special guest with us today. Her name is Jackie Thomas. Hello, Jackie. Welcome to the show. How are you today?
Great. Thank you for having me here.
Now, Jackie, you're a public speaker, you're a networker, you're an event organizer, and also a real estate agent. Today, though, you'll be speaking to us mainly about networking and how to network effectively. So, for the sake of our audience, can you give us a little bit about your background and what led you to become a connector of people?
Well, I'm not 100% sure even where to start with my background. I mean, in school, it was more of an HR focus and hospitality. I really like that stuff. And I think even back then, there was a component of connecting people right into this space of connecting them with information, connecting them to themselves, connecting different people that somebody had a want, somebody had a need, somebody had a solution. And I really enjoy that. It really lights me up. So to say, I was thinking about that. Where does it all start? And I couldn't actually come to a starting place. I'm not 100% sure, but the background sort of goes into did some time with human resources, your traditional admin stuff, and life just was nagging at me a little bit more. Had some health things go on, so that led into some holistic healing, which led into speaking and becoming an author and organizing a really fun show we had going on in Kitchener for a little while. And out of all of that, it led me to real estate of all things. So it's just, I think it's still the same theme, like you guys were saying, in regards to connecting people and the importance of connecting people with each other and with themselves. But it's definitely taken some different avenues.
Wow.
Yeah.
Great. So you've covered a little bit of what I was going to ask you next, but I'm just going to make an observation. I've known Jackie for, I don't know, 6, 7, 8 years or so, and we met in Toastmasters, which was a very good organization for helping people want to become public speakers. And then I watched Jackie get into event organizing. She talks about a little show in Kitchener. I mean, a little show with 200 or 300 people once a month. And I was amazed at how that came together so quickly. And how quickly you became one of these super connectors. So, what was the motivation, for you to get involved? I mean, that was a big dive into the deep end for you to go into that, wasn't it?
100%. And I think the things in life that are the best things for you to do are the ones that scare you a little bit. They're going to give you the biggest reward no matter what. And it was scary. I mean, traditionally, I'm more of an introvert than an extrovert. And I think when we think of networking, we think of those people that are extroverted. Now, when I do go into a room, I can very much be extroverted, but it's not necessarily natural, although it may come across like that. So to do a show where you have 200 or 300 people every month, I think really the motivation that kind of came from that is, for my internal motivation was to stretch myself and do things that I wasn't comfortable with. And then the motivation for the public was to allow people an opportunity to share their story, but also understand, kind of connect the dots in their own lives of, this is what was hard for me, this is how I overcame it. And people in the audience could relate. So there was a huge connector piece within that as well.
And again, for the benefit of our audience who don't know the event we're talking about, not only did Jackie organize it, but she got up on stage to introduce it, present it, introduce speakers, and do virtually the whole deal for what turned out to be quite a long evening. So again, a real step up for that one, and I think a good lesson for people who are nervous about speaking in public. Sorry, back to you, Kathleen.
So, Jackie, how important is it for entrepreneurs to network and go to business events so that they are connecting with each other face to face?
Well, it's interesting, and I may answer this a little differently than possibly expected. But I was thinking about that and just personally how uncomfortable sometimes that can make me going into these business events. And as I got thinking about networking and the theme more and more, I thought, really, networking is part of our everyday life. So to go to the events is great because that has an intention set out. You meet other people, usually in the similar professions, which is so important to network around your own, the people in your own industry, in your own field. But I think we shouldn't really forget about how important it is just to start conversations in everyday life. So yes, I would say it's important in business, like the business ones, but then I would say it's equally, if not more important, outside of those specific tailored intentioned events as well.
Okay. Now, the lockdown, and we all have our own thoughts on that. It's thrown a huge spanner in the wrench. Sorry, I'm forgetting. I'm not in Britain anymore. Huge wrench in the works for people who thrived on live face-to-face networking events and whose business depended on them. And some of those people have adjusted to do what we're doing, talk on Zoom, but many haven't. And now we're coming out of those lockdowns. So what would your advice be for entrepreneurs who've had this 2.5, 3 year hiatus in their live networking events? How do they get back into it? What's your advice?
It's a great question. And I think the advice really is just start getting out and going. I mean, I was at an event this morning and it was a Children's Health Foundation awards ceremony. And this is the first year that I've been invited to go to it. But in the past, the lady that I was with said the room was twice or 3 times as full. So it's, I think we have to at some point just hang up our hats of not going. And it's comfortable being behind a screen or being behind your desk or, oh, sugar. Or anything. Sorry about that. I got to turn that off. That's something I should have done before. I think it can be really comfortable not getting out there, but it's amazing when you actually go because the energy is different, the people are different. And I always find it shocking when you walk into a room and how many people you end up knowing or become familiar with, or how many people end up knowing who you are, which you never really thought. So I think it's just a matter of get it in your mindset. Have a coffee, take your deep breath and just walk in and do it. And the other thing I think is really important when you go into events like that is, and maybe this is a question, I might be jumping ahead, so I'm sorry, but is that component of, when people come in to smile or to invite someone to sit at your table. How many times do you walk into an event by yourself, or if you see someone walking in by themselves, show them that there's a chair at your table, even if you're with another group, and start having those conversations. I think that's a really important part if you're going to go networking with a partner or a group, to remember that you're there to meet other people. Right? It's like my grandpa used to say when he'd go to a dance, he said, I danced the first dance with your grandma and maybe the last dance. He goes, but if I wanted to just dance with her, I'd stay at home and dance. And I kind of take that into regards to networking, right? If you want to just talk to your own friends, stay home.
Stay home. Yeah.
That's the whole point.
That's right. Yeah. Kathleen, back to you.
Well, you touched on this just now about, how to make a networking event successful. So I'll spin it in a different direction, I guess, because there's a lot of people like introverts, and I would classify myself as one of those, believe it or not, that when you go into a live networking event, and people who are introvert will feel the jitters, really, because they might know somebody there, but they may not. And I've noticed and I've observed that people tend to gravitate first to the people that they know, and then they end up with these little clusters of people, and you're standing there wondering, okay, now what do I do? How do I make this work for me? Do you have any advice?
Well, I think for me, it's pretty nice because when I get nervous, I ramble and I talk a lot. So that's helpful. But for the people that maybe don't, I always think when you walk into a room and you just sort of be like, okay, I've got this, and you change your body language, number one. So you pretend you're confident, even if you don't feel that way. And the biggest thing I think is making eye contact and smiling, because not everyone's going to share your energy, right? So there's people, lots of times you walk into a room and you smile and they smile and you walk away, and that's that. And they're not your person that you're supposed to connect with, and that's okay.
Mhm.
But the next time you start smiling at someone, and then that leads to a conversation and so on. So I think, honest to goodness, like, smiling and your body language is the number one thing. And I remember people used to say, Jackie, don't stand with your arms folded. Don't stand with your arms on your hips. I'm like, well, where the heck am I supposed to put my arms? Like, I don't even know. And it's so uncomfortable not to have them, kind of close to my body. So, but I get what they're saying regarding that for body language. But I also think, just if your arms are crossed, but it's not like you don't have a scowl on your face and you're smiling, but you feel more comfortable, then that's okay too, right? I'm more comfortable when I'm sitting down. So if I'm sitting across from you, I'm going to have a much better conversation than if we're standing up. I find that very awkward. That's just how it feels comfortable. But I think smiling and holding, having a chair open, keeping an open part in your circle, is really, really important. And ask questions. Like, you already know all about you. So why do you have to share all about you? You already know. Why wouldn't you want to know about them? Because people remember how you make them feel, right, not what you say anyways. So if you're sitting there asking questions, and then sometimes I'll go home and be like, oh, I should have asked better questions, or I could have asked more intimate questions. Or sometimes, you meet those people and you have a billion questions, and then you're like, oh, I'm sorry, I don't mean to get so personal so quick. And then everyone just takes a laugh, and it's fun.
And just to follow up to that, is there a networker's etiquette? So as I mentioned earlier, sometimes you walk into an event and you see these clusters of people. Is it a no-no to kind of just introduce yourself to a group of people that are already there chatting? What is the appropriate protocol to that?
I think it would just depend. I personally, if someone came up in a group, would not be offended or think, what the heck's going on? We're at a networking event. That is what is supposed to happen. And if you can make sure you're the type of person that will be inclusive of that, then you'll also be the type of person that will be able to go up and say hello. So I think that's a very powerful thing, and people should not feel weird, or that it's not polite to interrupt. I mean, you're not going to go up and interrupt someone per se, but to just sort of, hey, can I stand with you? Can I join you? Can I, if they don't want you to, they'll say no. And you don't have to like them anyways. You can go to the next group that says yes.
True.
Yeah. I think what we tend to forget too is that when we're the stranger at a networking event and someone who's a regular comes up and befriends us, right? We immediately like that person, unless they're objectionable for another reason. And we feel grateful that they've rescued us from being a wallflower and not knowing who to talk to, right? So, and I know a year ago, I joined a different church, which has grown to be a huge church with 700 or 800 people. And they've asked me to be a greeter and an usher because I don't mind talking to people. And I know that when people come in looking lost and don't know where to sit and don't know what to do, and I go up to them and say, hi, I'm Peter, are you new? There's sort of beam on their faces, go, oh, yeah, someone's come to talk to us. So we're not strangers anymore. So I think we often forget that in our nervousness about going to new events, that we should be welcoming these other people because it makes them feel comfortable too if they're lost. So it took me a long time to learn that lesson.
I think the more you are able to welcome other people, the more confident you feel to go to an event that you may not know everyone, because you've kind of put that karma, so to speak, out there, right? That someone will invite you in, and if not, that's okay too.
Yeah.
Like, not everyone has to be your people. But I found that time and time again, when you go to an event and someone, in the group, I always like the people that ask me questions, right? Versus just tell me all about them. And I caught on to that early on. I'm like, wow, that felt really nice. I then want to do that for somebody else and make them feel very special and, get to know what makes them tick.
Yeah, yeah. And we've covered what I was going to ask you earlier. I'm going to make an observation that I came to Canada as a late middle-aged guy. So I ended up here with none of my previous life's networks. So no school friends, no military friends, no university friends, no sport, nobody. I knew my son, and that was it. And this is why networking is so important, and why building a network of contacts is so important. It's so hard. You can rebuild your house, you can buy another car, you can pick up all of that you've lost, but you have to work at making contacts and building a network again. And until you do that, it's really difficult to start any business or get moving. So another reason for this being an ongoing part of life is keeping that network, not only building it, but making it thrive and looking after it and cultivating it and protecting it as a two-way street, not just for selfish motives. So I just wanted to make that observation as well.
Right.
And that was, sorry?
No, go ahead.
No. It's so important. I also think, and I'd like your comment on this, that we shouldn't go into networking, and you've covered this a little bit, by asking questions with purely selfish motives. So we're not there just for our own interests. We're there to help other people as well, if we can, correct?
Yes, it's interesting you just said that. That's exactly what I was going to say. Since I have known you for 7 or 8 years, and one of the biggest parts of just networking in life and having these people, but you build these connections, and it's the connections with people that help you grow and become better and stronger and have confidence. So even if it's not necessarily your business at that moment that they're able to help, or you're able to help them, you really don't know what's coming down the road. And to be of service, that's something that I think is just, when you walk into that event, how can I best serve these people tonight? How can I be authentically me and in service of the people that I meet? And that might be a smile. That might be a, wow, that's really cool. You're doing a great job. Like, it might just be a word that you say to somebody that is your service that night. Or it might be the fact that, they hire you to sell their house, or they hire you to put on an event for them. But I think if we go in with sort of a servant's mindset, it changes the whole evening and the whole program.
Oh, absolutely.
100%.
I'm sorry, Kathleen, I'm going to press this one on a little bit, push on with this a little bit, because so many people see networking as the next deal, or how's it going to help me next week. So 2 examples here. First, with Jackie, we've known one of those 7 or 8 years. We've never done business together, right? Well, I spoke at one of your events, but that wasn't really business. That was fun. But because of that connection, because of the trust that you've built up, that I appreciate with you, there will be an opportunity. I'm not sure when in the next year I will have the responsibility of selling a property, right? And I've already spoken to you, because who's the first person I thought about talking about selling a property was Jackie. And now I switched gears a little bit. Kathleen and I met at a networking event way back, also 6, 7, I don't know how many years ago. And we happened to be sitting next to one another networking event. We got chatting. We worked out on, well, we saw one another at other events, and we got into business together. And then we started a talk show together. So, but all that took several years. It didn't happen overnight, right? So this long-term view is important too.
Some of my best friends, that's a good point, is I don't think I thought of that before your comment, have come through networking events, right? Just total strangers. And I think we have to remember there's a difference between authentic connection and authentic caring, and one of how can I make my business better. So I would used to get caught up, and I think it's important to share your business, share about yourself. Put the intention out that, yeah, I want to go to this networking event and I want to get 5 leads from this. Awesome. And then also, though, don't forget, how can I be of service? Because like you said, now you have Kathleen, like that's your business partner. And I also have some amazing, incredible friends that I've met through networking, and I wouldn't change that for the world. But that, because you have to have the courage, right, to go in, to smile, to say hello, to ask questions, and to be vulnerable. Because I think really that's human connection, is just your ability to be somewhat vulnerable to someone else, right?
Absolutely.
And as you both have said, it's all about building a relationship. And also, I would add that when you're going into a networking event, first impressions are so critically important, aren't they? And that's where you were mentioning, Jackie, about coming in and having a smile on your face and trying to be inclusive, and just, pleasant, and have a pleasant demeanor instead of a closed off, hands on your hips or folded, where you're appearing visually closed off from people. I think that's also important, because people, when they see you for the first time, they will see you as a pleasant person or a kind person, and one that is willing to speak to them. So Jackie, you, as we mentioned, you're currently working in real estate. So how important was networking for the success of your business in real estate?
Oh, well, it's funny because you're talking and I'm jotting down all these points because I want to talk about this. So to answer your, can I just go back one
Sure.
moment? One of the things how you said, like, it's the first impression they get when they see you. And so my background is as an energy healer as well. And I think it's also really important to recognize kind of the vibe you're giving off, because they're going to feel you before they even see you. So people are like, well, Jackie, that's weird. Like, what do you mean? And I said, well, so I used to do this thing when I spoke, and we'd muscle test. And so someone come in the front of the room, you muscle test them, strong, fine. Then I get everyone in the room to send hate. It's like the worst. Nobody wants to do it, but we do it. And they test weak. And then we clear that and we say, okay, now send love. And they test strong. And I said, that's the power of energy. So when you do walk into that room, if your mindset and your heart can be connected and say, you know what, I'm just loving when I walk into this room, people will feel it and they won't even know why they want to talk to you. They won't understand, but they will come to you. So that's something that you can do, with your body language is be in charge of your energy that you're putting out. I was at one networking event and I wanted to share this story quickly, and then I'll answer your question.
Sure.
And I remember walking in and I just started like doing speaking, and it was this networking event, and this person ran lots of different events, and I was so proud of myself. And I'm like, here, my name's Jackie and this is what I speak on. And in front of me, she took my card and passed it to somebody else like she could not care. And that was prior to this event that we had done and whatever have you. And I remember that feeling of like sinking in my shoes in that moment. I'm like, oh my gosh, like she's a huge networker and she's, everybody knows her. And now she just discarded me. I must be nothing. I'm never going to be anything. And so I'm sharing that story. So when people are listening, we've all been to those events. Well, maybe not all, maybe just me, but where someone kind of makes you feel, or you let them make you feel less than. And please just don't let that stop you from going to the next event, because that's more about that person. And if I would have stopped there, then I never would have been going to the other Monday shows, and I never would have keep going on my path that's led me here. So just that was really important. So Kathleen, may I ask you to repeat your question?
Yes, and I was just pointing out that you're currently working in real estate, and just wondered, how has networking helped you be the success that you are?
Yeah. I find it so funny because the term networking, I'm like, I relate with for sure because I understand it, but then I feel like, well, we don't go to these specific networking events. But as I mentioned before, I do go to the networking events, and I go to lots of different events or gatherings, or even in the grocery store. Like, I think we're always networking. I think it's important in regards to that. When I think of networking, I think of relationship building. So, and that's, like we had said that already multiple times throughout the last little bit. But I think the relationship building, the authentic relationship building, is what's helped me grow my business, because you actually really, really, really care, and then they talk to someone and they talk to somebody. So as far as networking in big events, the last few years has been different, right? It's been different. You can do that. But even just reaching out to people and building those relationships, I think is really, really important. So yes, it's helped my business. But in a specific way, I think it's just gaining more people to grow relationships with.
Right.
Hmm. Going back to, you mentioned first impressions, and I'm old and standards were different when I was young. And I had a strict mother who made sure I never went out without my shoes being properly polished, etc., etc. You know what I'm talking about. But I have noticed that some people don't take much care in their personal appearance when they go to networking events. Now, I know that t-shirts are in fashion. It still puts me off as an old guy when I go to a networking event and see a 30 or 40-year-old male in a t-shirt. And I don't wear a tie unless it's absolutely necessary. It's just a thing with me that a shirt without a collar is too informal for a business event. Now maybe it's purely because I'm old, but that's the impression I get. So someone who doesn't care about that is going to find it much more difficult to have a good relationship with me than someone who does have a better standard of dress. So, and I'm just talking about the male perspective. How do you feel about that dress?
Well, I think that it's pretty great that you have that self recognition and you understand that that's really your thing, not at all about the person wearing the shirt.
No,
so
sure.
that's huge, because there's a lot of us that have that and we're not cognizant of it. We don't it's not in our forefront of our mind. We just say, oh, that person, no. So I think it's important maybe, to have those let it lead into, oh, I mean, I don't think you walk up to somebody like, why are you wearing a t-shirt and not a collared shirt? But during the conversation, it might lead to that, right? Like you might, and then have a whole different understanding of why that person does that. So it's easy for us based on our own beliefs and our own ways to have a judgment of somebody. But I'd encourage us especially in a networking event, to sort of maybe play a game then. Like, that person really aggravates me. I'm going to play a game, find out why they chose to do what they're doing that aggravates the crap out of me.
That's
and
right.
You might be so amazed, right? Like,
I've had that. I've had people that have really irritated me, generally because of dress or filthy shoes or whatever, torn pants or something. And yet, when I've overcome that and got to know them better, they're actually really good people and worth knowing. But it was so easy to
style, Peter.
Yeah, so easy to discuss.
I was just about to say that.
Giving my age away.
Yeah, no, but it is true, right? What do you wear? What do you do? And I don't know. I think we should really just throw a lot of that out the window and just come authentically, and we'll create the conversations, and that's the thing in business is, to me, there isn't competition. People say real estate, oh, it's dog eat dog. And I'm like, not really. I mean, there's a lot of business out there, and I'll pick up the business that's aligned with me, and I don't want the business that's not, and vice versa. So to me, it's much more important to show up at these networking events authentically, because that's where the connection's made. When everyone walks in and everyone's just trying to promote business and everybody's, trying to be what they think they're supposed to be instead of who they are, there's no authenticity there. No. I don't remember anyone's name, and I leave and don't want to go back to that event. So that's me personally.
We're getting close to the end of time, but I've got to ask you a quick question on it. I don't think there's a lot of point asking you too much about the property market, because this video is evergreen, and people in 5 years' time will have a totally different view of the property market than they do today, hopefully a better view. But what I will ask you, the real estate, being a real estate agent or realtor, along with selling life assurance, has a reputation of being a really, really difficult career to succeed in. All right, a lot of people dabble, but few become successful, and you've become successful. So what's the secret? Have you got advice for anyone who might be watching this, saying, I've been downsized, I've lost my job, my job's been taken over by a robot, I've got to do something else, maybe real estate? Would you have advice for someone like that?
I've got lots of things to say to someone like that. but the first one is call me. And we'll have like an individual chat. But I think at the end of the day, these people that, if they say, hey, yeah, I want to try something new, I want to try real estate, I guess I'm looking for a little more clarification of the question, right? So is it I just want to try something new, or is it I want to get into real estate? Because if it's real estate, I mean, you want to talk to somebody who's in it and making it happen, because it's not all roses.
Sure.
But it doesn't have to be as heavy and cutthroat either. I mean, you create your life and you create your business and you create what you want. Does that mean that I don't run into people I don't like? I run into them. I have to deal with them just like everybody else. But I don't run into them very often. Like the other day, I was almost in tears. I was going for a walk and I'm like, I'm so grateful for my broker and the agents that I work with at my office, because I've never met a group of people that is so kind and so loving and so great. So I think when you, what's the secret, not just to real estate, but your secret to life is just recognizing all the blessings and the gratitude and having a very strong intention of where you want to go, and then allowing that to help it to happen to set yourself up for success. Does that answer your question?
That's very good advice. Yeah, excellent,
Okay,
excellent.
like
Back to Kathleen.
Well, we are running low on times, but how do people contact you, Jackie?
The best way is to send me an email at jackiethomashomes@hotmail.com, or of course a phone call or a text, and I'm sure that information can be noted underneath the video.
Absolutely.
Excellent. We will put that there. And for our audio listeners who are not watching the video, and for our audio listeners who may be not watching the video right now, all Jackie's contact details will be in the description that you will find on whichever platform you are listening to this on. And of course, the video will be posted on our website, theyakkingshow.com. That's it from me. Over to Kathleen to wrap it up.
Well, thank you so much for joining us today, Jackie. We've so appreciated having you on the show. And we thank you all once again for tuning in to our show. And until next time, take care, everyone.